new show on also our YouTube channel. So if you're looking to know more about smart contracts, all these things, this is the NFT and smart contracts with Doc and Brent. We're going to be bringing all the information for you with smart contracts, NFTs, all your questions. And really, this is the very first episode. So thank you so much for joining. And again, in the comment section down below, tell us what you're going to be doing. Are you learning? Are you looking to learn about smart contracts? Are you looking to invest? All those things. That would be awesome to hear. So, of course, with my constant co-host, Brent, how are we doing today?
We're doing great. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you'll stick around for the life of this because it's a lot happening with NFTs and smart contracts. And a lot of us have questions. So you're going to get to hear me ask some questions to Doc, and then you're going to hear the business side of things where we're looking at how do you use this information to either have greater investments or build your business.
Good times. So as we're going to get started today, again, you'll just hear a conversation with me and Brent talking about smart contracts, all those things, but also we're going to be bringing you resources. I've mentioned this in a couple videos before. I think there's a really interesting project called Build Space. They're doing a really good job talking about Web3 and smart contracts and NFTs. So we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be talking about the basics. As your questions come in, what you're looking for, we're going to be creating content around your questions and what you want to do in life as well. So we're going to get started. I'm going to show you a brief overview of what I would use to get started, and then Brent's just going to ask me questions. We're going to, go from there. And as you're seeing this is a brand new space. So anyone that says they figured it out, they haven't figured it out. Okay, this is brand new. There are a lot of different resources. We're all learning, and we'll be talking about all the resources that we're consuming and ways that you can start reading about so you can be impactful with your business. So with that in mind, we're going to first look at one of my favorite resources. It's called buildspace.so. And this allows you to understand how to actually create smart contracts, how you actually use Ethereum, write smart contracts, all of those things. They have 4 really interesting projects. They're moving very fast. They're coming out of Y Combinator, which basically Y Combinator, if you've heard of Uber, Airbnb, companies like that, that's where they came out of this program. So they're one of the alumni from this one. And if you look at what they've got planned right now, and I've done some of these projects or I'm in some of the projects, they're teaching you how to build and deploy your first Web3 app on Ethereum with Solidity and smart contracts. Those terms, you don't know what that means, we'll talk about them today. How to ship a Pokemon NFT trading center with a custom Open Zeppelin contract. How to generate your own limited edition NFT collection and deploy it with Ethereum smart contracts, and build your own turn-based game on the blockchain using L2 network. So there's a lot of interesting projects involved in build.so. And again, they're free right now. They are free. So I encourage anyone that's interested and want to know the intricacies of what a smart contract does, how you do it. They already have it. So I'm in 2 of their classes right now. I'm finishing up the Solidity and Ethereum smart contracts, and then I'm doing the minting your own NFT. I'm doing that as well. And as you can see, I have my notes of how I'm doing this in class as I'm going through this. And I think it's important that we talk about it because this allows you to understand, even if you're investing in crypto, what these things mean. So now that we have the overview and we'll talk about other sources, Brent, let me know where you want to start and where you want to talk about first.
Yeah, I think we should start with the basics since this is the first class to some people watching and they don't know what Ethereum is. And then we have those who are thinking Solidity. What in the heck is that? So, and there's a lot of misconceptions around Ethereum, and especially when you're talking about people who build and then people who invest. They think Ethereum is actually the crypto, but it's not. It's actually Ether is the crypto, and many people don't know. So, on the base level, Doc, you want to go in and kind of start telling people what is Solidity, what is Ethereum?
Okay, so let's go back to. I'm going to go one step further. So, I'm going to talk about what blockchain is and what this is and all of those things. So a smart contract is just like a contract. Why is it smart? Why is it called this way? Now, this is just one way to look at it. There are tons of different analogies, all these things, but a smart contract allows you to have a contract that allows you to keep track of what you're signing up for. And that's what blockchain is meant for. For example, it is a ledger. So if you're thinking about back in the day when you had villages and people, someone from out of town that was shady, they would come into a lodge, they would write on a ledger or write in, hey, this is John Doe. I signed in at this time. That's a ledger, right? And that is what a smart contract is saying. It's saying, I have a ledger of these two people are saying, I signed in, or I am saying I am who I am. And the contract is whatever you make of it. So if you're saying I'm signing in and I promise to give this person a house, with the smart contract, it will say, you said it, you're going to do this. The other person is saying yes. Boom. All of this about, hey, someone forged, someone else came into my account. The blockchain is allowing that to decrease the chance of someone forging or doing something like that. Now, we'll go into DeFi and how this is possible and what this means, why this can be decentralized, and why this is practically a way for it not to break. But that's the main thing. The smart contract, it's a ledger. People can now agree upon certain terms and be able to carry out whatever they decided in the contract.
And Doc, with that too, I think for people who are just trying to go like even basic, the contract states the terms, like Doc said, and based on those terms, they become the triggers. So every time a term is met, a trigger is done, and you don't need what used to be arbitration or people coming in and having a lawyer. It's automatically done. So it's an immediate reaction to something being accomplished, or whatever the process is that you say I agree to.
Exactly. So that's the basic level. That's what's happening. And the reason that people love it is because, again, fraud can go down, or the idea of someone faking what they are, all of those things drastically decreases. Now, the next thing,
Doc, real quick, one other thing too, right? I think it takes out the likelihood of somebody just changing their mind. You have people who, at a base level, you say, well, I did what you said, and they're like, well, I didn't like the way you did it, or it wasn't done exactly this way. When it is in a smart contract, it's triggered. When it's done, the trigger happens and you move to the next phase of the contract.
Yeah, exactly right. And this goes back into why it's so important for businesses coming up in the future, like you mentioned on the onset, talking about escrow and all of these things. Literally, if you're having it in a smart contract, the necessary entities to have things in escrow, you will not need them if you code it into your smart contract. It will do it automatically. So all of this, I need to pay a third party to release it when said contract is created. They're essentially out of the job if you use smart contracts instead. And it's scary. That's why a lot of people don't want to hear it. But it's reality. It's reality. Now, again, there's still reasons to still use someone, but in reality, this is going to be changing the industry very, very quickly. So that's really good. Okay, so the next thing to think about is decentralization and things like this. And I would just like to pull up. I'm always like, no matter what, who you follow, things like that. I'm always about letting people have more material so they can start seeing reputable sources and look at what they're saying as well, because sometimes the analogy, or you want to go a certain level deeper. There is a really good episode on Acquired talking about the CEO of Solana, which is another crypto that you can look at. But this is with the CEO of Solana. Really, really fascinating interview. It's about an hour and a half, but we're going to be talking about a lot of the things found in this interview. But if you want to listen to it in its entirety, it's an hour and 14 minutes. Check out, we'll put it in the show notes and everything. But the good people at Acquired did a great job with this. So what is necessary to think about as well as you're going through this is something called decentralization. And just to keep in mind, as you're looking at these different networks, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, all of these things, yes, these are decentralized and all those things. But as they're getting started, it still takes a bit of centralization before there's enough nodes or enough people to have the blockchain to be able to make it decentralized. So I just want to say that before we explain blockchain in general, because a lot of people think, well, if I create my own blockchain or I want to create my own crypto, it's going to be decentralized right off the bat. Well, if there's only 3 people that have it, it's not really that decentralized, really, because if you take out one of the persons, you took out 33% of the network of your blockchain or your crypto that you want. So it has to hit a certain critical mass for more people to have it running the nodes, the servers, and everything of this blockchain, or it's just not going to be that effective. Does that make sense, Brent?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So now that we know that, let's talk about exactly what blockchain is. So I'm not about trying to do stuff fancy. I'm gonna say define what blockchain is. That's what I do. I Google things so you understand, because there might be a better way of saying it. So I'm going to give you the exact definition, and then I'm going to be also talking about what that means, okay? And so we're just looking at this just for a moment. I'm going to be bringing this up. There's a few things that we see, key takeaways, right? So let's talk about this for a moment. Let's go over here. Okay. So we're going to see, it says, what is blockchain? Blockchain seems complicated, I like this right here. A database is a collection of information stored electronically on a computer system, information, or a database. That's what we need to know. Now, why is that important? Because everyone will say different definitions of it's something else. It is a chain of different values that will represent what's happening. So every time you're adding something to the blockchain, you're adding something to the end of the chain. And we'll talk about proof of stake and proof of work and all those things if you hear those terms in a moment. But essentially what you're doing is you're talking to the group, you're talking to the network and seeing what someone's about to add to the blockchain. The next part, is there a consensus that everyone believes that this is true? And that cuts down on the fraud, right? Because it's decentralized. So instead of a bank saying, yes, this check is real, and the bank is deciding it, you're asking the people, the decentralized people all around the world, to check their ledger and say, yes, what you're about to add, that is correct. We will proceed to do that. Now, we'll talk about the gas fees and all of those other things because of how it's proven to the network, and that's where we get into the difference between Solana, Ethereum, all of those things. But you're asking the people, do we all agree, a consensus, agree that this is true? Yes, let's now add it to the chain, and now that is going to be on everyone's ledger. So now everyone is saying, yes, we can verify that.
Yeah, and I think, Doc, that speaks volumes to the fact that this is why many of these platforms want as many people using it as possible. When you have 3 people, like Doc said, and you lose one person, you're talking about 33% loss. And so who's validating what? So the more people many of these platforms have, the better off it is, because we become what's called validators. And, that's, again, terms I'm sure we'll go into. But, hey, Doc, question for you. Yeah. So, I'm on a blockchain and my information gets added to the end of the chain. What does that actually mean? Okay,
that's a really good question. So this is where I'm going to bring into, I think it's one of the best. Honestly, BuildSpace, I mean, this is why I'm not getting paid by them. I just think they do it one of the best, because before I took this course, I didn't really know what that meant, and I didn't understand where that is even coming from. So if we're looking at the notes, this is part of the build a Web3 app with Solidity and Ethereum. This allows you to understand this coming up in the write and deploy your smart contract. So let's dive in and talk about this a little bit at a time so we understand this. Hold on one second. There's a part at the very beginning, write and deploy, and there's a phrase that I really like that I think will answer your question a little bit better than what I could do. Okay? So what is going to be happening is, first, when you're writing out, let me bring this up for a second. This is the overview of what's happening. So I'm just talking about the overview, and then I can go into details if you want. So what's going to happen first, you need to write your contract, right? Once you write your contract, the next thing that you have to do is, well, hold on one second.
Yeah. And while you're pulling it up, the framework of these contracts that we're looking at, they're written differently, but the content of the contract is still the same. Like, why are you building what are you trying to accomplish with this contract? You still think about the same basic things of a contract. Who's it for? What's the exchange of value? Do all the parties agree?
Here we go.
And how does it work? How does the contract work, and what does it represent? Just keep that in mind. It's not as if it's some unique way of now contracts are written differently. They're still at the heart the same.
Exactly. So let's take a look at this for real quick. And by the way, this is what I'm always saying. Build Space, take a look at them. We'll put it in the comment section. I'll put it in the comment section if you're going to check them out. Really good guys. And really, again, the way that I was learning how to do it, it's sign up. Their class is just getting started. I cannot talk about it more. So one of the things I really like when they were talking about it is first you write your contract first, then you're compiling your contract locally and you run it. Then you store the data of your smart contract and then you deploy it. The reason I bring that up is a lot of times I didn't understand the system of these things and what this meant. So let's break this down. You first have to write your contract, meaning you've got to write what is it going to do, right? So the contract, again, if we don't know what the contract's going to do, what's the point of it? It's a very big difference of you're saying, I owe Brent lunch, or I owe Brent a house, right? That's a totally different contract. So first you've got to write the smart contract of what you're going to be doing. Then the next part is you're compiling the contract locally. So in this way too, you're imitating the blockchain environment. So you're actually putting it onto a local network. You're doing all of those things. You're running it before you put it on the Ethereum network, which is crucial because what if you mess up, right? So if you don't do this correctly, you could decide to deploy the contract. You could be spending, if it's connected to your MetaMask or something, you could be just jacking up how much Ethereum, the ETH you have, and all those things. So you're doing it in a test network. Then
and
from
when
there,
you say jacking up, I think you mean like in gas fees and the fees associated if you do it wrong, or what do you say?
Yeah, or using your own money by accident, right? So you could say like, hey, I'm going to deploy this contract. I'm going to do it. Well, if you're doing it in a test network, it's going to give you fake ETH. It's going to give you fake amounts to test the transaction. If I do it in a real environment and I say like 5 ETH, right? That could be painful. that can be painful, right? So you want to do it in a test, and they go through this. The storing the data, uploading it, and it depends if you're using a Web3 app, like basically the front end, what it looks like, how you connect it to a wallet, all those things, and we'll talk about that later. But the next part, which is really important, deploying the contract and making sure that it is going in the right direction. Right now, again, for more details, if you're saying, Doc, you're going to overview, that's why I'm saying go sign up for their class. They go step by step. We're doing an overview right now, but check out their class. It's running right now. It's excellent stuff. And if you missed the deadline, because I think the class just started on Saturday, they run new classes every 2 weeks. So just check them out, and they'll do all of those things for you. Okay.
Doc, real quick, what do you like most about the class so far?
What do I like most about the class? I like that it is step by step in the community. They have a great Discord community. So they have hours where I can go in and just ask people questions. I really like that. And for me, when I like it step by step. So I feel really accomplished when I'm doing one thing at a time. And the other thing is too, it does take a little bit of expertise when you're in the class, but I have another friend that was just getting started. He's a programmer, but he had not done stuff in Ethereum. So now I just kept asking him questions. And so the mixture of, I think this is if someone's familiar with the concepts, they've done a little bit of development, but they've never done anything in crypto or with anything with Web3s. I think this is really good. But I like how the formats, it's just a little bit at a time, Yeah. Really good question. So that is So did I answer your question, Brent? Let me do a
Yeah.
summary. Could you say your question one more time to make sure?
Yeah, I mean, what really can go wrong if you write the contract incorrectly?
Yeah. Doing it incorrectly, if you have it on the real network, it can, depending on the two parties. So say, for instance, I could write a contract. Hypothetically, I could say, hey, I want to exchange something in the real world, and I'm going to exchange it for like 3 ETH or something like that, right? If I write the contract wrong, when the two entities switch or the transaction is done, I might take out the wrong amount. I might take out too little. I might take out too much. Now, to do this, when you do a test network, if you do something wrong, an error will pop up and you will have to fix the code, and there we go. But that's one of the problems. If we're looking at something like, if I'm trying to create my own marketplace, like say, for instance, an NFT marketplace, if I write the code wrong or something like that, the transactions might not fire, or I could just do something totally wrong. So again, if I'm looking at doing something like a trading center or something like that, whatever I do with that NFT, or I'm trying to exchange it, if I write the contract wrong, I could do error, or again, I could be charging the wrong amount. That's the main things.
Got it.
Okay, cool. Good times. Okay, so we finished up that. All right, so we talked about the basics of what blockchain is, decentralization is. I think it's also important to note, if people hear like proof of work or proof of stake. Do you mind if I talk about that?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so
staking is huge. So I mean, let's definitely talk about that.
Yeah. So, okay. So if you're looking at this, and again, when you're looking at the different types of work if we're looking at proof of stake or proof of work, you're looking at different ways to validate if the blockchain is correct, right? So if there's two different ways of doing it, and if you're looking at how Bitcoin and Ethereum is doing it, is very different than Solana. By the way you're doing different proof of work or proof of stake, it also changes drastically how many transactions you can do per second. Okay, so here's just a few things. The transactions per second for Bitcoin is around 7 transactions per second. The amount of transactions Ethereum can do on average is 8 to 11 transactions per second. Benchmarking Solana, they can do 50,000 transactions per second.
Okay? I mean, I think that's why they're trying to coin Solana as the Ethereum killer. And I mean, it's sad, but Ethereum still, from a market cap standpoint, is too big to fail in this environment right now. But the transaction per second that's the race. That's the race.
Yeah. Now, looking at what now Ethereum, and that's why Ethereum 2.0 is trying to change, but they're doing a lot of other things that's going to be still not possibly as fast as Solana, but they're still working on the infrastructure on 2.0 when they're going to launch it and everything like that, because we're looking at, you see what's going on with the gas fees, and that's just how many times people are trying to do transactions. If the network is full, it's going to charge you more, all of those things. So they have to deal with that. Solana, it's built differently. Now, the thing is, still, Solana is still new, and if you looked in the news a couple weeks ago, it still crashed. Still crashed, right? So it's still going on. But also, too, Ethereum, years ago, Ethereum still crashed, right? There's all of these systems, they're still not perfect. In the math, it's perfect. It still doesn't mean that it's perfect in everything that you're doing. Okay, so keeping that in mind. Now, the reason the two different ways when you're looking at proof of work and proof of stake, because you're doing it in a totally different way, you're going to have different costs associated with it. Because the way that you're looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're checking the entire line, right? They're looking at all of it, versus when you're looking at how Solana is doing it, they're looking at a totally different set of criteria to validate from the community if this transaction is true, if what they're saying is going to be good, and then it decides to do a transaction. It's a fascinating interview. If you, again, we'll put in the show notes, but the fundamental difference of how Solana is created, that is what changes fundamentally how the transactions can be done at a different speed. And that's something to consider. Like Brent was saying, it's still market cap of, what people are trusting, where it's going to be heading, all of those things. That's a whole other discussion. But just realize, because of proof of work and proof of stake is different, that's why it's going to take a different amount of energy to be able to verify that, because you're looking at the network, how many people's ledgers, what it is, and going from there. And keep in mind, if you really want to just deep dive, looking at the thermodynamic energy and what the cost of it and all those things, and looking at what that means in Bitcoin, take a look at it. But there's a lot of other definitions that we could go deep, but just realize there's a lot of other factors, how they measured it, looking at the network, and looking at the blockchain. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Let's see. The other thing was too, not really. I mean, we could talk about it, just to let you know, if people are talking about like a settlement layer as well. If you hear the word settlement layer, that's the final state of the trade. So that's like the buyer, that's the bottom layer, and that needs to be secure. So a lot of the things that you're hearing about Bitcoin, Ethereum, they're not talking about it at the settlement layer, right? You're talking about it above it. So just keeping that as well.
So, Doc, is the settlement layer the equivalent to net profit or net loss?
I don't know if. Tell me more about that. Tell me, what do you mean by that?
So when you get to close to the settlement layer, it's the end of the contract, right? The contract is being completed, but it also takes out all gas fees, and everything else are then subtracted, and that last layer is it. That's what somebody receives. To me, from a business standpoint, that's like looking at, okay, you have people who run around and they say, I grossed last year $100,000, or I grossed last year $1 million. And it sounds cool, but then when you take out fees, business overhead expense, the cost of the contract, or the cost of doing business, you're really netting, whatever's left after the expenses are taken out. And so it seems like that settlement layer is also kind of the net after you look at the gas fees and everything's been executed with the contract.
That's interesting. I would have to do more research to make sure if I can agree or if that's the same thing. When I'm thinking about settlement layers and looking at it, it's more of the final send off before they send out the money, of it saying, yes, this is the final check of security before we allow you to have the money on both sides. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So it's like, to me, and maybe I'm just doing it too much, like it's the final bouncer. It's the final bouncer of like, before we give you that thing, like okay, here's your money. It's that right before the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a lot of the layers you're seeing it's not on that layer. We're a layer above before settlement. So Ethereum, if you're looking at Solana, Bitcoin, all those things, we're working at a level above. Okay, cool. Let's see. So we looked at that. Next up is, so there's two different ways of looking at this next, Brent. I can go more of the deep dive of the mechanics of a smart contract, or we can kind of talk about why this is important in the market and kind of understanding the lay of the land. Which way would you like? More technical? Definitely, or just?
For the first one we do, I think it's the lay of the land, because people who've stayed with us this long and people who are just coming in, their biggest thought is, why is this important? Why does this even matter? Like, I don't want to know details until I know why it's important. Yeah. And so let's dive into why it's important.
Yeah, the why it's important is this is going to fundamentally change how humans interact and what they do with big businesses and not. If you're looking at it, there's a couple different ways of, if you're trading it and you're doing stock trades, this is a very volatile market, and there have been millionaires been made in a few hours based on these spikes. That's possible, but also the way how transactions are managed and created are fundamentally going to change. And also creators. This is also going to help creators because it's going to help them in their royalties and not needing big businesses to track things down. So let's go through a couple examples. We talked about it briefly.
Before you go into the examples, I did what you do, right? I just did a Google search for big companies using smart contracts. And if this can give you guys some context, you're talking about companies like Microsoft, PayPal, Overstock, Whole Foods, Etsy. You know, in the car companies, you have Tesla, you have Lee. This is Starbucks, Home Depot, Lowe's. So just understand this isn't something that, you know, just at the, I guess you call it the fight the machine group who are saying we're going to be the only people using smart contracts. This is fundamentally being adopted by Fortune 500 companies. And anybody in business knows there's a trickle down effect from that. So if you're not paying attention to what's happening to the smart market contract, stay with us, you know, subscribe to the station. We're going to keep diving into this. But you were about to give us some examples, Doc.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's a perfect tee up. If you're looking at what's going on with Mark Cuban in the Mavericks, they're going to be looking at different tickets that are going to be using crypto or NFT. They're going to just be looking at that. The 76ers just announced that they're doing their own NFT project. Time Magazine just released their NFT project on OpenSea last, like 2 weeks ago, something like that. So they're going to be doing this. Now, the reason behind like how this could work is if you're looking at ones that are doing things with escrow, like we talked about before, you can now have a developer write out your contract of what's going to happen. So arbitration of what people are going to be having. You could also have someone just write out the contract, the smart contract. You can connect your MetaMask or whatever wallet you're using. And when you're saying yes to the contract, it will already do the exchange and give both entities what they agreed to. Done. You can do that with one programmer and he could write less than 100 lines of code and get that done securely.
Yeah, and even to that point about the Mavericks, it's I don't know if you heard about a coin called Chili's, but this coin literally Chili's takes, and let me give it. So if I'm gonna bring it up and give you the coin symbol, it's C is in Charlie, H is in Has, Z is in Zebra, and so this coin, what it does is it takes players or very popular players in different athletic arenas, and it gives them essentially like their own coin. And with that coin, it gives, you know, you can stay after practice and shoot with them. You can go to, if they're doing an after party from a concert. One soccer team, I think recently they had a coin for the soccer team, and they started allowing people to stay after and get lessons on how to kick goals. But the thing is, there was no tickets. There was no, you didn't download your email and print it out. You had to have your phone. You had to show that you actually hold this coin with this player's coin. That's the only way you can get in. And so, you know, many organizations are starting to understand that if they can leverage the power of the star power of these people, they can do it through smart contracts. And then that brings into NFTs, like, you know, how they're leveraging NFTs, being content creators. And, you know, it's unbelievable. Honestly, this marketplace, you're talking about, there's a place in Puerto Rico. This is Doc. I'm gonna go back, well, of course, and I'm come right back. This is in line with what Doc said about millionaires being made in a day. There's a place in Puerto Rico. They call it Bitcoin Row, and it literally is a number of people who have relocated to Puerto Rico to avoid taxes, and they're buying these ridiculous houses, and they all hang out and party together because they have been made millionaires. I don't want to say simply, because you have to take the risk to get into crypto, and it's a risk because you can go broke as easily as you can make money. And that's why, you know, we want you to stick around with Doc and I as we go on this journey together, because it's not just a situation where you go, I bought an NFT, I'm gonna be rich. It's not a situation where you're like, you know, I know what NFTs are now. I'm about to write NFT and it's gonna explode and I'm a multimillionaire. No, it's a lot to it, and there's layers. So just stick around with us. We're going to talk about those layers. I'm going to ask a whole lot of questions, give some input. I'm going to act like I'm you. And my thought is, what would the person watching this ask? Why is this important to that person? And where Doc and I will, we'll have dialogue. It's gonna be questions, and Doc might ask me questions about, what is the business application of, like, why would it matter? And then we're going to dialogue about that. So it's going to be a chance for you all to listen to conversations we have. And Doc and I always have some really interesting conversations that no one ever gets to hear. So this will be a really good time.
Yeah, yeah. So again, this is why we started just the beginning, looking at all these things. One last thing I was going to say, and then you decide where you'd like to go. The other thing is, when people are looking at this, like, why is this such a big thing for the aftermarket, third, fourth, whatever? When you're doing things with NFTs or crypto or whatever, if you're writing in the contract that I'm going to make 5% or 10% of every transaction pass, if you're going to decide to sell this other thing, it stays, and then you will profit after it. So think about the royalties of potential artists. There is a it's like Spotify, but it's on Solana, and tons of EDM artists are on it. They don't have to deal with record labels of what they're putting out, their music and everything. Their royalties go directly to them. Why? Because it's in a smart contract. They don't have to deal with a record label of, hey, I need you to track down 5 to 10%. No, it's in the smart contract. So now the artist can, if they set up their smart contract correctly, doesn't have to deal with a studio holding them ransom for years and say, well, we've got the lawyers, we'll go after people. No, if people are going to download your thing, if they have a key, guess what? They just did everything themselves, and they have less headache. They can do that for the rest of their career or anything like that. And it's golden. So it's going to change a lot of different things. And Solana, if you listen to the interview, they're not just talking about it being the fiat currency of something. They're thinking about how can they be transforming transactions and communications with humans. It's very interesting. A lot of interesting things coming up. So, Brent, you let me know.
If anybody is an independent artist out there, or if anybody out there has been thinking, I have music sitting here, I had no idea what to do with it. That is something Doc and I are going to be helping artists with. So if you reach out, I know all the thoughts are going crazy. The synaptics are firing when you heard Doc say that, and you have music, and you want to kind of go the independent route. Contact us, and we can actually talk to you about what that's going to look like. We're working on creating a summit or some type of conference where we're going to do a deep dive into this, but we also are working on a plan to consult individuals or groups independently on how they can apply this to their business, to their art.
Excellent. Yeah. So remember, we're going to have the links down below for the Discord group. Also, too, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing this every single week. Also, too, throughout, as I'm building things out in Build Space, I'll probably go live a couple times during the week, just so you see as I'm building these two different projects. I've already done the first one, so the notes will be available. I'm going to do the second one from scratch, so I think I'm going to start it later this week. So stay tuned on, minting your own NFT collection and shipping a Web3 app to show them off. That's going to be all later this week. So if you have any questions, let me know. Brent, before we conclude, do you want to give kind of what's going on with you? Because, of course, you're into investing, doing all these things. How have you been seeing crypto change for your portfolio, or how much time and energy are you looking into this space?
Yeah, so I've been doing it with the IEA Crypto Bulls, and we've been meeting just to discuss cryptocurrency. And I have to say, it has been a roller coaster of an experience, but a beautiful roller coaster ride. And small amounts of money treated as kind of like an experiment, right? Because like Doc said in the beginning, I don't care who you are. And if you're claiming to be an expert in the space, it's too new. Things are changing by the second. You can be very familiar, but when you start getting to that expert level, saying you're expert, I'm concerned. For me, I've been investing. My background is a stockbroker. Been a stockbroker for over 20 years. Got out the industry because I really just wanted to manage my own money at this point. And, I started working with the group, and with the IA Crypto Bulls, we've been really diving into crypto. And let me tell you, Solano, it is a lot of buzz around that company and what it's going to do. And I think the gap or the disconnect was no one understood the NFTs and the smart contract side of it. And that's when Doc and I were talking, and it was just like the world needs this information, because even if you're not going to build it, you want to invest in it. And if you're not investing in it, you want to have it built into your business. And we started to really look at all those angles. And Doc has a huge following internationally. From a business consulting standpoint, I've been consulting businesses now for about 4 years. But even when I was a financial advisor, I consulted large corporations on buy-sell agreements, cross-purchase plans, and succession planning. So I've always been in the realm where I've consulted businesses. And looking at these two worlds marry, it's a very exciting time. And you need to be in our group. And I'm not saying that because it's our group. I'm saying that because things are changing. If you're not actively part of a group, you're going to be left behind. And at some point, you're gonna really regret it. And this isn't necessarily an NFT piece, but $41 in 2010. $41. Do you know the pizza? Do you know the Papa John's pizza story?
Yeah.
Okay, $41, and we'll save the story till till we get into our Discord group. So I'm just gonna give you the punchline. If you want to hear the whole story, it's gonna be in our Discord group at some point. $41 in 2010 today is worth over $300 million in Bitcoin. So again, that's only 11 years. $41 in 2010, 300 plus million today. There's too many stories that, if Doc and I, if we do it right, and some of the things we build and some of the people we consult, we're going to make some millionaires. And, we really hope that you're part of that, because if not, we'll enjoy it. But it's coming, and it's here. So yeah, that's all I have.
That's awesome. I got some random questions I have out, and we're gonna keep this in because I had questions about this. This is something I was looking at. So I was looking at investing at a few things. And again, let me tell you how new I am into investing. You're gonna laugh. I haven't told this story to Brent actually. I was talking about this because, again, I was listening to Acquired. I love that show. And I listened to, it was a 3-part 9-hour podcast about what is it, Berkshire Hathaway?
Warren Buffett, right?
Yep. It was, and that I never cared about investing until I heard that, and I was like, but I told this to my wife. Actually, this is the thing. This is so. There's a couple of things. Sometimes when I was younger, I would just always combine things. For example, I thought One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Fiddler on the Roof was the same thing. So just like mash it up. And I kid you not. So I have severe dyslexia. I've always had that, since I was young. I remember when I was younger, I didn't understand who Warren Buffett was. And I remember that until I was listening to the episode. I remember when I was trying to read Warren Buffett's name, I thought it was Buffet was his last name. Now, you have to keep in mind, too, I was a very fat child and I love fast food. I thought he was actually the KFC Colonel because it was this old man, and his last name I thought was Buffet. I was like, did he create the buffet? Had no idea about investing. So just keep in mind, I have no problem telling people that, but what I don't know, I just don't know. But with this, going into this, I had no idea into this world. Could you explain to me, Brent, why? I was reading a little bit about it, but why is it so hard to become an accredited investor? I wanted to do some seed rounds, and they told me I had to be an accredited investor. And there was so much like I would have to either pass all these tests and do this, or I basically have 1 million in capital right there. Could you talk about like that of being an accredited investor? Tell me about that.
Different organizations have different rules, but roughly they want you to have $1 million in net worth. Sometimes they'll require it to be liquid net worth, which is actually different than total net worth. And they may require that you make about 200 to 300,000 per year, and that you've invested in a certain number of either private equity investments or that they see your stock portfolio. The reason they want people to be accredited investors, it's the same thing as is essentially the Securities and Exchange Commission saying, we're trying to protect you from doing something stupid. And if you can show us that you've experimented with these stupid things before, will then let you do something else stupid. So, and the reality is, the stupid thing they're talking about is very smart to do. And there's a lot of people in the industry, and this is actually a shout out to Securities Exchange Commission. So many people have had the snake oil salesman come in, and you all have seen them on YouTube. They slide across the hood of a Lamborghini, and then they jump out on the other side. They're like, I make $1,000 every hour. If you want to make $1,000 every hour, let me show you what to do. Send me $10 million. And it's like, whoa. Number one, everything here is rented. None of this is yours, and you have no track record. And the Securities Exchange Commission realized that people were getting into these Ponzi schemes, and they were getting in because there was no qualification. So they started creating what's called accredited investors. However, what that did, and this is just the reality of it, it started excluding minorities from being able to get into initial investments when most people were putting their money into, most wealthy people were putting their money in, because they weren't accredited. They didn't have a track record. That's really what accredited means. Like, show me your track record. And it's really important to understand the benefits of being an accredited investor. When you start looking at somebody who says, you know what, I want to do a seed rate, like what you said, Doc, you know, I want to do the startup company, but I want to do maybe I want to take in seed capital, or you want to provide seed capital. They will disallow you from even providing the seed capital because they say you don't truly understand the risk of what you're doing, and there's no track record to shows us that you reasonably understand what you're getting yourself into. And if you never did it, it's hard to do because they won't let you do it to then say you did it so you can keep doing it. And so it's a slippery slope. But you know, there are companies out there, and we can put some of this information in our Discord group. There's some companies out there that have found ways around that, and they allow people to get in early stage investing. But just, you know, in summary, accredited investor, they want to know that you have some experience in high net worth marketplace so you don't get burned accidentally.
See, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was getting more mad looking at this last night. I'm not even joking. Look, people think I'm joking. No, I already put together a Notion doc. I was like, I'm going to get them. I'm going to get them. I'm like, I'm going to study and just get these tests because I'm like, this is ridiculous. Because I know how many times I've heard people that don't know anything, blowing all their money in Robinhood because they didn't know what they were doing. I was like, how is that any different than me just trying to get something in a seed round? So, like you mentioned, I was like, I need to know what tests I need to study for because I'm going to get them.
You know, actually, I passed the Series 7, I passed the 65, and the 82, I never had a need for it.
Makes me so mad. Makes me so mad. We're gonna have to talk about this offline because I'm dead serious. I'm like, because there is a very specific company that I like, and they're like, we're doing a seed round. It ends this week, and they asked me. I was like, and I'd never heard of accredited investor. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna put a K in it. No big deal. And they're like, you've got to be an accredited investor. I was like, what is this? I was like, what do you mean? I was like, do I go to the bank for it? And they're like, do you have $1 million? I was like, what? Like, what? And then, you know what? It made me mad because I was thinking about all the rounds of Amazon when they're just asking family and friends, you know, people just putting this in. I was like, they're not letting people do this. So, okay. So we're going to talk about this later, but I was highly upset. And Sabrina, my wife, is just like, you stop trying to take it to, I was like, no, people got to know this. I was like, this is the dumbest thing. I didn't even know this existed. How is this? Anyway.
Well, you know, that's the funny story is when Gary Vee first invested in Facebook, he sidestepped that because the family actually was selling shares, and he went to the family, I think it was the parents, and he bought shares directly from the parents who got it through the friends and family round. And so, you know, but it all goes back to, like, you know, do we have access to those communities? And even a step further, this is the beauty of NFTs and smart contracts. So really, to pull it back home, start talking about the fact that you can go into an NFT, which is kind of like a startup investment / you know, some variation, if you will, of getting in on a class of investing that we otherwise never had access to. But because it's all digital, we don't have the accredited investor rules. And you know, they're not going to ask you, do you have $1 million? Do you do 300,000 or more per year? And then they want to see financials. It's not a situation where you can just say yes.
Yeah.
They're gonna pull your financials, and then have you pass the Series 7, have you passed the 65. These are tests that take like 2 or 3 days to complete, and we're talking about over 8 hours of just test taking. And I mean, it's highly complicated information. Doc, you probably will love it, but trust me, I will never do that again. And I think right there, I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if my fingers. So after I finished the 7, that is the certificate from when I did the advanced financial planning course at Georgetown, which was the master level certificate course to understand financial planning. And it's just one of those things that is, and that's new, by the way. They used to disallow advisors who had a 7 or a 65 to become accredited investors. That was from pushback from the industry, because if we didn't have that million at one point, we were isolated too. So there was no discrimination there. They were like, unless you have the money, get out of here.
See, and this is why it just makes me, and I was just like you were saying, I was like, the richer keep getting richer because they're in these seed rounds that then allow them to make more money. I was like, I'm telling you, when I heard that Warren Buffett one, I'm like, now I understand the flow. Like, it sounded like I just got out of it made me feel like the Matrix right there. I was like, this makes so much sense why people are so rich. And you know what? The thing is, I'm going to be honest with you. About a year and a half ago, Brent was talking to me about investing. I just shrugged it off. I was like, I just really don't. Because to tell you the truth, I was always, throughout my life, I could always make money quick. But I was just like, how do these rich people keep having more money? Like, how is this possible? And he's like, you need a holding company. I was like, Brent, I don't need a holding company. He's like, you need to do this. And then I was like, after listening to this thing, I was like, I need a holding company. Why don't I have a holding company? I was like, oh, Brent did tell me that like a year ago. And I was like, holding company? No, no, I don't feel like it. So
no,
keep in mind, you're seeing this in real time. You're going to be seeing this. We're looking at investing, but and tell the good people with your investing. What's the Investing Academy and all that?
Yeah, so if anybody's interested, we have a group, and this is only on the crypto side, and we do educate people on stocks. That is Investing Education Academy, and really the main tenet of that is demystifying the stock market and other investments, so our members can make more money. And it's unbelievable. The rich getting richer is not a game. And I hate to say, I'm kind of starting to get to that side myself, where you'll just wake up and the money you invested a couple days ago earned you another $10,000, and you didn't do anything. You just had the account. But if you stick around with us, we're going to show some NFTs and some other investments along the way that if you are into it and you want to take that risk, it can make a lot of sense. And you get to see Doc and I kind of have our banter, because I do remember, and so this is just a story for all of our listeners. It used to frustrate me so bad that Doc didn't take investing seriously, because he's so much talent. And I was like, Doc, oh my gosh, there's so many things you could be doing to make money. And there's so many things that you understand that others couldn't, that they don't. And you can use that, leverage that knowledge to, find the right investments. So I'm super excited to be a part of this and to be taking this journey. And everybody who joins us, it's going to be very fruitful.
Cool. Good time. So very first episode, thank you so much for joining. Remember, you can check us out on YouTube. Remember the Discord channel. There's going to be a link down below to make sure you join, ask questions there. We're going to be bringing you all this information every single week. And again, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next episode.